Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:06. It's the fourth hour of our 4-hour morning extravaganza. It's America's morning show. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in. If you missed any of the show today, you should download the podcast, subscribe to it, and catch it whenever you can. In the second hour, our 6 o'clock hour, Patrice and I think, had a really lively discussion about this whole immigration, H-1B visa, skilled labor, Vivek Ramaswamy, internal debate going on, college admissions,
universities,
all that jazz. It was good, and you should listen to it. And we appreciate you letting us be a part of your holiday week here. And when you do subscribe to the podcast, an angel gets its wings. So you want that to happen.
Oh, wonderful.
8:35, we'll speak with Payton McNabb. She's got a brand new documentary coming out produced by our friends at Independent Women's Forum. It's called Kill Shot, How Payton McNabb Turned Tragedy into Triumph. It has to do with her being injured traumatically, her brain injury during a high school volleyball game because, well, she was forced to compete against a biological man. We'll get into all of that. But Patrice, we're joined by a friend of this program who's had quite a year, Adam Guillette. He is with Accuracy in Media, of course. But let's remind everybody what Adam was doing on our college campuses this year as we saw the rise of the pro-Hamas student protests that actually had nothing to do with the students at these universities. But here's what Adam was doing after October 7th on our college campuses.
I'm Adam Guillette with Accuracy in Media.
Accuracy. Okay, so you're a Nazi.
I'm a Jew. They probably wouldn't let me in the Nazi club.
My favorite part. Well, considering you're not officially allowed in the Nazi club, let me take this opportunity to wish you a happy Hanukkah here on day 3 of Hanukkah, Adam. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Very glad to not be a member of the Nazi club. Unfortunately, it's increasingly crowded with memberships. It seems like people are dying to get in, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, so to speak. The revelations, I think, about what really happened on our college campuses, and again, they call them the elite universities, Harvard, Columbia, MIT, Penn, Yale, across the board, the Ivies were targeted specifically. And Adam, what you've learned here about the faculties there, the culture on these campuses, the administrations, the reason that this pro-Hamas anti-Semitic demonstration culture was so eagerly embraced on these campuses is because they had created the perfect atmosphere for it. This did not happen accidentally in a vacuum, did it?
That's exactly right. You call them elite universities. I call them the Hitler Youth. But what we see now, back in the day, we would all bemoan, the professors are radicalizing the students. These days, the students are far more radical than the professors, and they arrive that way because on our K-12 education system across the country, especially even in red states, they push these diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, which essentially breed anti-Semitism and teach young people to hate the West, to hate America, to hate the values our country was founded upon.
Well, Adam, a good trend that we saw this year is starting with Florida last year, but also Utah and a number of red states starting to defund DEI in public colleges and universities, saying, we're getting rid of those DEI positions, the DEI bloated administrative jobs and programming and all of that. Have you been starting to see any sort of changes? And I know that these tend to be red states that are doing this, but is there fear, backlash against DEI bureaucracies, even in these elite, or as you call them, Nazi student education camps? Are you seeing any changes around DEI in some of these schools as well?
There's reasons for optimism, but also equal parts, perhaps, reasons for concern. Because as you know, we have a team of hidden camera investigative journalists, and 6 have banned DEI in higher education. I sent my hidden camera investigators to each of those 6 states. To our shock, we found some universities were actually abiding by the law. To our non-shock, we found many that were happily, totally just ignoring the law, doing whatever the heck they wanted. We released our Texas investigation last year. People got fired as a result of it. And we have 5 more states that were releasing hidden camera investigations from DEI in higher education this year, plus a heck of a lot more content, or next year, I should say, and a heck of a lot more in K-12 education as well.
In fact, Adam Guillette, if we could, why don't you just sort of give us a quick report card on your own work and Accuracy in Media's work, because it was quite a year, 2024, in terms of people look at organizations who really try to move the needle in the conservative landscape. And I don't think that there's any group that can really hold a candle to your effectiveness in getting these university presidents to resign before their board of regents actually kicked them out. And you've got some pretty good scalps, if I can say, to show for it.
Well, you're right. A lot of people are mad at us because the unemployment rate is ticking up, largely because of our work. 4 Ivy League presidents were fired, 2 of which we played a minor role in, but 2 of which, Columbia and Harvard, we played a major role in. The president of USC, the university where they choose their valedictorian, and they chose an anti-Semite, the faculty did, that university president was fired as well. We've seen teachers pulled from classrooms like Ian Golash in Seattle, who was openly pro-Hamas and confronted us on camera. We've seen administrators in higher education lose their jobs. And it's because we use the same tactics every time. We have a playbook that works. We find out what they did. We broadcast it to the world. We buy their domain name, like, testkim.net or TyrionSteinbeck.com, set up a profile page explaining what they've done. We send a billboard to their campus educating everybody. And I have some really fun new digital tactics as well. If we could find the email address associated with your social media account, we run ads targeting your social media connections, telling them what you did. So when you show up for Christmas dinner, your great aunt says, "What the heck were you doing at Stanford last semester?" And it all devolves from that.
All right.
Oh, that's wonderful. No wonder The Guardian is calling you a far-right organization with far-right values. I mean, I think that should be a badge of honor for you guys. Anything else that we can look forward to in the incoming year?
Well, we've started to investigate what's going on in K through 12 education regarding, as the topic you just mentioned, biological boys competing in women's sports. And we've been in several states now where it is against the law for that to occur. And what we found in these red states was not only did the administrators coach our investigators into how they can violate the law, but they also said, one guy said, quote, "It's not against the law if you don't get caught." And 2 of them told us that even if they had to travel for a field trip, the biological boy could share a hotel room with the biological girl, no problem.
I take it that you're not lamenting the idea that the Department of Education at the federal level could very well be disbanded here based on President Trump's plans and this sort of thing. Last I checked, what did they spend, $1 billion on DEI programs in public education? That's really where this is all stemming from. It's top down from the federal bureaucracy in the education department.
That's certainly a big part of it, and the amount of money spent on horrible things at the Department of Education and the federal government really is terrible. Columbia University, just Columbia, America's most anti-Semitic university, a private university, gets over $1 billion annually from the federal government. $1 billion for a private university where tuition is $50,000 a semester. They get $1 billion annually. Why are we funding this garbage? They have an endowment bigger than the GDP of many countries, yet the taxpayers are on the hook for $1 billion annually. And yes, much of it comes from the federal level, but a lot of it is these administrators who I meet with, with hidden cameras. They're true believers. It's a religion to them if they believed in religion. They think they're doing right by the parents and by the child by lying to the parents, brainwashing the child, and breaking the law.
Adam Guillette, Accuracy in Media, great work. And I know that this wasn't easy for you. We're sort of celebrating and we're sort of looking back and patting you on the back. But you've been swatted. You had to flee your home. Your family had to flee your home because of that dangerous activity. People can easily get injured, if not killed, with this sort of dangerous thing. Is there any further investigation there? Did they get the people who have been doing this to you? Because you have been targeted and it's disgusting.
So the folks who committed most of the swattings and sent most of my death threats, we suspect might have been either affiliated with Columbia or friends of the folks at Columbia based on a bit of our investigation. They use Proton Mail accounts. They're clever. They'll be hard to find. However, as part of our lawsuit against the John Doe plaintiff that, is our swatter, we've been able to go to Meta and go to Google and go to Twitter and go to other email service providers and say to them, hey, we've got a court order. We want to know who's associated with this account. and they've started to give us a few of those accounts of people who sent me death threats, messages like, I want to put a Hamas bullet through your head. And we're going to start visiting those people in 2025 because I don't care your ideology. I don't care your reasons. Nobody should be sending death threats via email or social media. People need to learn that their online actions have real-world consequences, and we're going to deliver that lesson.
Amen.
Stay tuned. We'll keep a look.
Wow.
All right, Adam
Fantastic,
Guillette. Again,
Adam.
like I said, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, and keep us updated throughout the year.
Be safe.
Thank you for having me.
It's 8:17. Senator Joe Manchin, who's really only going to be a senator for West Virginia for another, 8 days, I think, if that, he put out a post on X, the Everything app, with regard to Joe Biden's commutation of the death sentences that we saw. And Byron York, a friend of this program at Washington Examiner, says that we really do need to have a full examination and investigation into what went on here with these commutations. You know, when a president commutes a sentence, a death sentence like this, each individual case should be examined independently and on its own, and the merits of that case. That's what the past precedent is. You know, all the people who care about the norms. And Joe Biden said that morally, in good conscience, he couldn't allow these death penalties to stand for these, 43 or 47 individuals here. Knowing that Donald Trump, when he came in, would sort of reactivate the death penalty process against these people. He said morally in good conscience he couldn't do that, although if it's really his moral and his morals speaking to him and what he calls his Catholic faith, then why did he allow the death penalty to go forward with 3 of these individuals?
Yes, exactly.
And those 3 individuals, by the way, are involved in high-profile cases that actually struck a chord politically in this country. So in other words, you know, if it's morally wrong to kill a murderer, which you could certainly make the argument that it is, then it shouldn't matter whether that person
it's got to be consistent
was killed because they were, you know, a psychopathic child rapist and serial killer, or if they were a anti-black or anti-Jewish terrorist.
That's
killing is killing, right?
That's right.
But then Joe Manchin focuses on this, and I want to point it out there. After speaking to Samantha Burns' parents, I believe it's my duty to speak on their behalf and say President Biden's decision to commute the death sentence for the 2 men convicted in her brutal murder is horribly misguided and insulting, particularly since Samantha's family wrote letters to President Biden and the Department of Justice pleading for them not to do this, but their concerns were unheard. I can't imagine the grief that Candy and John Burns are reliving and dealing with during the holiday season. As their U.S. Senator and a father, I want to express my deepest sympathy. Yeah, sympathy, fine, but what are you going to do about it? Well, of course, you can't do anything about it, but we deserve at least to know more, Patrice, about what went into these decisions. Who advised Joe Biden to do this, and did Joe Biden really do it? I mean, I'm sorry to put it that way, but frankly, anything that comes out of this Biden White House, the first question should be, did Joe Biden really do that? Was that really his decision? Is he aware that he's done this?
So let's just to refresh folks' memory, Brandon Basham and Chadwick Falks. These were the 2 gentlemen who kidnapped and killed Marshall University student Samantha Burns. It was Samantha's family that Senator Manchin spoke with. Her remains have never been found, and these 2, rightly so, were headed to receive death for what they did to her. And it's sad. I mean, listen, I understand that people have very, very strong beliefs and opinions, but on either side. But you have to wonder why President Biden would choose to remove the death penalty, commute their death sentences, and 32 or 35 other people on that list. The parents have every right to be angry and upset and to feel betrayed by a man. President Biden has always positioned himself as the one who understands grieving parents, as the one who, gets what it means to lose a child because he has lost a child. Yeah. And yet this is what you do to the parents. So many parents, like Samantha Burns' parents, who they still have yet to get the remains of their daughter and be able to put her body to rest once and for all. And yet President Biden is saying, oh, well, it's okay. The people the 2 guys who killed her, they should kind of, just have to live with the penalty. I think that the parents are right to say, well, what about us? What about vengeance for our child?
It's not even vengeance; it's justice, and
justice,
and it's
right.
how our
It's
system
justice.
works. And by the way, for now, we respect the rule of law, we respect this, we respect that. Well, he just upended the rule of law with the stroke of his pen, and he has
Yes.
never given any real explanation for it, not on an individual basis. He said, "Well, not in good conscience, I can't do that." Well, why is your good conscience allowing you to let Dylan Roof and Tsarnaev and the Tree of Life synagogue
Boston bomber
murderer? What your conscience is just fine with them being punished with capital punishment, but you could. It makes no moral or ethical sense. Not to mention the fact that he plays the Catholic card here, and yet he's just fine with the millions of babies who have been killed before they have the opportunity to be born over the years. As such a supporter of Roe v. Wade. It's a despicable, lamentable disgrace of a presidency, and it can't end soon enough. 8:23.
Coming up, Payton McNabb from the Independent Women's Forum. She's going to be here to join us to preview her new documentary, Kill Shot, where she talks about how she turned tragedy into triumph at the hands of a man who's pretending to be a woman. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company, 8:30.
Payton McNabb from the brand new documentary called Kill Shot, how Payton McNabb turned tragedy into triumph. You've heard her story, of course. When I first heard this story as the father of a young lady who played high school sports, I immediately put myself in the position of Payton McNabb's parents. This documentary, by the way, produced by our friends at Independent Women's Forum. You can catch it over at iwfeatures.com, iwfeatures.com. Payton McNabb, it's great to talk with you again. It was wonderful meeting you up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, when you participated in that bus tour that really did help save Title IX, and I think helped change this election as well. Thanks for joining us, and Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
You went from this injury to finding out that this is going to affect you literally for the rest of your life because of this one moment. And I think most people could be bitter. They could be angry. When did you decide to turn this into your cause? When did you decide that you would now make sure that this does not happen to another young lady?
Yeah, of course, it's a really hard decision to make. And at first, I was still 17 at the time, so my parents let me think on it for a few months. When I turned 18, I could decide on if I wanted to speak out or not. And during that time, I really was just trying to heal, and I thought a lot about it because it is scary with the thought of putting your name and your face out there and for everyone to see in your story. And it was completely out of my comfort zone and something that I didn't want to do, but I believe that my story could have helped at least prevent it from happening to at least one other girl. And that was enough for me. I just didn't want that to happen to anyone else, and I truly believe that's what the Lord had planned for me, so I'm just going to continue to follow it.
Well, Payton, so good to talk with you again. I think it's worth just going over just what happened to you, the injuries, the life-changing injuries you sustained. I mean, I was just watching the trailer and some of the video. The fact that some of the discs in your neck, were crushed together. You lost periphery vision in one of your eyes, traumatic brain injury. People think, oh, maybe it was just playing a game of volleyball. But walk us through how your life is no longer going to be the same, the injuries that you sustained and how that's changed you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the beginning, the injuries just continued to get worse, and the headaches were so bad I had to constantly wear sunglasses everywhere I went. People were always watching me. I couldn't drive for a few months because of the vision impairment, and I needed extra help in school, which is something that I've never had to happen before because I couldn't retain information the way I had in the past, and that's something that I'm still having to work with today and getting tutors and extra help in college. And that's really frustrating because it was just 100% avoidable, and all these other things that follow it. My body's just in shock from the traumatic brain injury that I developed a couple years ago, and they don't know if I'll ever be 100% back, but I'm just slowly trying to get there.
We're speaking with Payton McNabb. She was a high school volleyball athlete who suffered a injury because there was a biological male playing on the opposite team. And there's now a documentary about this experience, and you can get it at iwfeatures.com. Payton, President Trump has vowed that he is going to take whatever executive action he can to protect women's sports. President Biden, of course, did quite the opposite in trying to rewrite Title IX and making more incidents like this a commonality, frankly. Where does this political discussion stand right now? And also, how do you respond to those? They're getting pushback now, even more pushback. Trans activists are saying, these cases are so minor, it doesn't even affect people. They're only bringing this up to divide us and demonize trans people and dehumanize them. That's the argument that they're making, and I'd love for you to be able to respond to it.
Yeah, well, I think the two different opinions for the two different parties really just highlights the overwhelming majority that we got to see at this past election. But also, I think that the Democrats saying that and assuming that this whole thing is just about tearing down trans people or whatever and dehumanizing them is just completely ridiculous and flipping the script and playing the victim, which is what they're good at. But I think that this whole thing is dehumanizing women, which is why we're trying so hard to stand up and push for this to be talked about and for women to be heard, because that's exactly what it's doing to women.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and Payton, Larry talked about the national issue, how this is a national issue, but talk to us about the state level. I mean, we've got listeners across the country. What are some of the successes that you've been able to help with? Your viral testimonies in state legislatures, but what are some of the ways that folks in different states can ensure there are protections for their girls playing sports in high school in different states?
Of course, yeah, I'm very thankful that my story's been able to help different girls in different states, for sure, be able to pass different bills and legislation that help keep them safe. And I know in North Carolina specifically, my story did help a lot for it being my home state, and we ended up getting the Fairness Women's Sports Bill Act passed in North Carolina. But yeah, I think that just highlights that if you're willing to stand up and just refuse to comply and say something, that they are forced to listen to you, and hopefully change will come after that. So I think people just being more bold, more brave to say no, and not afraid of anything, because they're not going to do anything to you. All the threats that they give you or whatever, nothing's more important than your daughter's life or whatever. So women deserve this. This is basic rights, and we're just going to keep fighting for them.
Yeah. Well, Payton McNabb, you are inspirational, and I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry that we as a society weren't able to realize exactly what they were doing and what they were trying to do and the dangers that came from it. We should have been better, but we're trying to make up for it now. And those activists who say, it's just it's a small number of people, it really isn't that big a deal. Well, what they're saying is they're willing to let Payton McNabb suffer lifelong injuries for the sake of their own political cause. They're willing to break a few eggs here for their omelet. And we're saying no. No, that we're not willing to sacrifice individuals for this larger, demented political cause. And Payton, you're inspirational. You really do. Anytime I get bored talking about this, or I start to worry that maybe we're talking about it too much, I'll remember you, and I'll remember that we can't talk about it enough. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Payton.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me get my story out there.
Yeah, take a look at this movie. Independent Women's Forum has done such a good job on this issue, and they're making these documentaries, and they're really well done. It's iwfeatures.com. 8:45.
Weeknights with Mark Levin, 6 to 9 p.m.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
And Patrice, that wraps things up for this last Friday, I believe you pointed out, of 2024. And, of course, as we venture into next week with Julie Gunlock back on Monday, we're going to be doing a lot of reflection on 24, as well as some looking forward to 25. You and I will not be on the air again until next year, though. So
that's right. Well, Happy New Year, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you, and to you as well. It's been quite a year. We've been through quite a bit this year as a show, as a radio station, as an industry, and as a country. And boy, things are lined up for an explosion this next year. It's going to be fantastic, and we're poised and ready for it. And I'm so glad that you're going to be alongside with us. Do you do anything big on New Year's Eve? Do you do a big deal with the kids? Do you let them stay up till midnight and all that jazz?
No, I hardly even stay up till midnight. I mean, unless I'm at a church service. We might probably do it's like a 7:30 church service and then kind of go home and call it a night. But it's more just kind of planning for next year, what we set some family goals, what we want to accomplish, and actually just look back at this year and all the things that have happened and the way the boys have just been progressing. So just grateful to the Lord for that and grateful for my WMAL family. You guys have really embraced me. You guys showed me so much love. Our listeners show so much love. It was fun to be part of the Free Speech Forum. That was a blast as well. So I'm looking forward to continuing to hang around the studio if possible.
Of course. There's big things coming up for this program and for our station. And you mentioned the Free Speech Forum. If you all enjoyed the Free Speech Forum, stay tuned. We might have some news for you about that coming up. But first, we've got the Chris Plant Show coming up. You have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday with Julie Gunlock. Take care.